Hello Final Fantasy fans, I'm Jackie Fox and welcome to our first episode of Applibot Economics. Because for people who've seen the Gumi Economics series, this is going to be a space to talk about more of the monetization and kind of the mechanics of that as it goes to it, and kind of like behind the scenes business stuff, you know, things outside of like talking about game mechanics or characters or stuff like that. It is going to be more of an economic or mechanical story than that. So if you're familiar with Gumi Economics, you know what we're kind of some of the things we're about to be talking about, but I wanted to kind of give this series a bit of a fresh start for Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, because it's a different game, and even though we're still like the parent company here is the same, you know, so I can still talk about Square Enix in the same ways that I did about in the Gumi Economics series. That is still a common tie here. This is being overseen by a new company, so it seems like a new series is in order. That just makes sense to me. And wow, I have definitely some feelings. Like, this is one of the first times that I've seen an update, logged into Reddit, seen someone absolutely going wild about how the update was rolled out, and then like logging in fully prepared to like disagree with them because it's Reddit. We've been on Reddit. We know how Reddit can be sometimes. But actually ending up agreeing with them to the most part, but also realizing that I have different expectations perhaps than some other people do, and like actually interrogating why that is for myself, which I actually found to be more interesting than some of the other things. So let's actually talk about like the game stuff first before I get into just a little bit more of an economic rant, I guess, than usual for this even for this series. Editor Jackie here. I want to add just a little bit of a clarification before we get into this, but in the video multiple times, I'm going to be saying something along the lines of, just because I wasn't close enough to 170,000, I couldn't even attempt to do the Sephiroth mission, and that actually isn't the case. I can attempt to do it. The problem wasn't my overall power level being too low. The problem actually was that I hadn't cleared Sephiroth EX2 because I hadn't gotten used to the two-part event structure that's been rolling out, even though I did correctly predict that there was going to be another physical defense-based free weapon coming soon. I didn't necessarily know it would be a part 2 to this event, but here we are. So Barrett's getting a another physical defense weapon. He already has like one of those. Like, that's already, I think it's the Max Ray is one that I use pretty regularly. And that's going to be probably the third part of the physical defense combo for me. And it definitely looks like having a tank healer DPS set up for this fight is going to be important. It's not doable. It's not impossible for a free-to-play, but it is definitely going to be very difficult. This is going to be on the level of a super boss, or like a very difficult boss fight, a very hard level content, such that we already have. But that's the 170. I have no idea what the crash level would be like beyond that, because I feel like I already have to train to beat the 170. So there is a certain degree to which the spirit of what I'm saying later in this video is true, that it is pay gated if you actually want to do the crash mission, and maybe a bit of difference is made in like level 55 hitting, which I mentioned in the video as well. But it still seems that for less concrete reasons than I mentioned in the video, but hard truths nonetheless, it seems that at least the crash mission is probably a bit pay gated compared to previous content in a lot of ways, and especially because this is like a limited event. If it were like the very hard versions of the Espers, and I think I can do Ifrit, but I can't do the very hard versions of Shiva yet. Definitely can't do Rama. But But that's okay. Those aren't going anywhere. I can work my way up to that in the future. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But you know, there's a FOMO, especially with there being a weapon that is a really good combination, especially for all the same reasons I said the Torn Wing was going to be great. This is just the other part of that, why everyone really needs both of these. So like, this is definitely something that you really want. But it seems like it's going to be pretty hard to get. Now, saying that, I want to be clear that, like, we haven't seen this play out. I'm not sure what's happening. It's so early in the morning. This could pan out to be a little bit easier than we're thinking, but I don't know. The rewards seem pretty good. Like, a lot of draw tickets. I'm never mad at getting a lot of draw tickets with it, but it also seems like it's going to be a slow, very difficult grind, and quite difficult for some players, maybe undoable for more. I mean, like, especially with the Torn Wing, for the most part, being really accessible because of the daily rewards thresholds. Like, if you're playing the game, you probably spend 500 energy a day, and if you don't, it's not too hard to push those rookie numbers up pretty quick, because you can spend 45 energy in one fight, maybe even 60. So it's not hard to almost not even play the actual event and still be able to clear through a lot of the event, at least as far as that first weapon goes. But the second one looks like it's going to be a real pain to unlock. So while the missions aren't absolutely like pay gated in the same way that I thought, like, I would have to have more better weapons, that's the only way I'd be able to raise my stature enough to be able to even be worthy of challenging them. But it looks like, the 170 is doable for sure. You just need a really good strategy. You really need to know what you're doing going into it. Like, really the hardest part, as we'll see in the video and in the footage that I have for you, is that you're going to have one character reduced to 1 HP really early on, and then you're going to get hit by a very powerful AoE shortly after that, and that's going to be a 1-2 punch for one of your characters. Now, you can sustain a lot more easily after that fight, but that's not to say that there aren't additional thresholds that won't wipe you in similar ways. It's just to say that the first such threshold is fucking the beginning of the fight. Making it just really difficult, and maybe something that warrants either tank healer, DPS, or, I mean, you definitely need a secondary healer, absolutely for sure, but you may need 2 AoE healers, which in its own right would be kind of a little bit of a pay gate, because, like, I already made it clear that if you're re-rolling for this game, you should probably go for AoE heals. Anyone who has that option, more or less, you should go for it, especially if that happens to be Aerith or Matt. But also Tifa with the lifeguard wraps, it seems like you're going to want one of those 3 characters with their AoE healing weapon to be able to maybe sustain through this, because it seems like you're going to need a lot of healing. But now that I'm thinking about it, so the AoE is a magic skill. I assume it's Shadow Flare. That seems like I might just be like biased by it's a magic skill in War of the Visions, but if that's true, then the previous 2 event weapons, both increasing your HP and magic attack resistance, that would mean that the person, because he seems to target the person with the most HP at any given moment, so that very first attack is going to hit the person with the highest HP, or maybe your tank here. So if you build that tank to be resistant to magic, using the previous 2 weapons as sub-equipment, or possibly as equipment on them if you're using Zac or Glenn in this fight, then that person might stand a better chance of surviving the follow-up Shadow Flare. But I also think that maybe having a strong defensive buff, and they just handed us one again with the Torn Wing, so maxing that out is maybe even a prerequisite for this, which is weird because it forces you into an odd build of Sephiroth. Again, the one that I was imagining in my last video of just like of where he's still high damage, but he's not really using much of his ATB for damage because he's also applying shields to everyone. Now, the shields last for a while, but they can also be broken down by Sephiroth's attacks, I believe, as well. So, he has to apply them to everyone on the team. That's still going to take turns, and, the way I was running it for this video, he's even healing for me. So, just a slow and very deliberate Sephiroth, but also... Well, actually, like, if I'm going to have him healing, I may as well put the Torn Wing as his primary sword, but that makes the... Okay, so... That is actually valid, because he does get the healing power up off of that one, and that would allow me to use his S abilities better, which is great, given that that was the free equipment that's, again, kind of a prerequisite for this fight, I think. But actually running it main slot, I hadn't thought about that. That would give me a better healing power. That might be exactly the Sephiroth that this needs, which... I guess is perfect. Like, they give you the answer and then for free, and then they hand you the problem and say, have fun with that. But like I say in the video, I do think that this is kind of a super boss situation. And I think that there are going to be people out there who can figure out how to take this thing down without, like, absolutely wailing out. But I think that it might take a little bit to figure out. So don't freak out just yet. Your content creation family is trying to figure out how to beat this thing. And some of us, a lot of us, especially the ones who do YouTube more often, may not actually have the money to wail out in this game. So if we beat it and we can show you how we did it, then maybe you can copy us. Anyways, this has been a long preamble, but thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video. But, logging in today, there's the new Sephiroth the Arrival crash events. First of all, I don't really like this version of a box summon. Like, this is my maybe my fourth. I played Record Keeper. I don't remember if they had box summons, though. Maybe my fourth Final Fantasy game that has box summons, and this is the worst iteration of that. In that, like, I don't know why it has to be a 10-to-1 system. That just feels like ass. That really genuinely feels like ass. Like, if it was a 1-to-1 system and you just gave us fucking less tickets, I don't know. Maybe I could... It's just like, I feel like I'm spending way too much to get way too little, and, while it hasn't been hard to do the, to get the Torn Wing maxed out. I'm almost there. I'm pretty much right on the precipice of that, and that will be very easy to get, even with just daily rewards. And I should be able to farm like the last stages of the box event a couple of times for that. But the new difficulty stuff and the gold level stuff looks like it's going to be even more of a pain in the ass. Now, again, this is like basically update day, so it's, this could play out to be a little bit better than I'm seeing right now. And maybe with the level 55 update coming, if that comes, and if I'm able to build up to level 55 and get all of that new juicy character growth board stuff, then maybe this becomes a lot more doable, because the power spike between level 45 and level 50 was pretty high as well. So maybe 50 and 55 is going to put me up to the level that I can even do this stuff. But as a player, I've only spent maybe, I think it was like $35 or $40 in game. I've only really used my red crystals to buy the level 45 shard packs, which is, out of all of the shard packs that they offer you, I think the best value, because the other ones, like, they get close to it, but this is really the best value, and it blows out of the water like what's regularly in the shop. So I just kind of wait for those and do them for characters that I want to awaken. I haven't even really used most of my crystals. I'm still basically a free to play, if not just a baby minnow. Because, I've been waiting for this game for a long time, so I figured I'd at least throw them a little bit of money on the front end, because I'm still used to growing up with this mindset of, like, we buy our games, we pay like $40 or $50 up front, and we have the game. Unfortunately, that model is dying more and more and more, and it is long dead on mobile. It's almost has never existed on mobile, at least never successfully really existed on mobile. And, like, for games like this, it seems like the gacha-ification is really the thing that's working. And I know people have a lot of problems with that model, and we'll talk about some of the issues inherent to it. But damn, it works. And I think I have a slightly different perspective than most of Reddit. Reddit, just my imagination here, but Reddit feels incredibly middle class. Like, every fucking Reddit story I ever hear is the most middle class shit I have ever heard. And from someone who is a poor American Southerner, I am so fucking far from the middle class that there's like a zip code difference between the two of us. Sometimes literally a zip code difference between the two of us because of how segregated this country is along class lines. I mean, I guess, like, growing up in the American South, I'm used to everything being pay to win. The idea of a pay to win video game it feels wrong in a lot of ways, right? It feels really fucked up from gamer culture perspective, because in a lot of ways, throughout history, gaming has been a hardcore meritocracy. There has been no way to buy privilege within a game necessarily until maybe the last decade. The idea of paying more money to do better just had never caught on, because people paid what were relatively large sums of money to get the games to begin with. And, you know, there was a very long time where I just couldn't fucking afford many video games at all. I wanted to be a gamer, I just didn't have the money to game. I always, as a kid, dreamed that there would be a way that I could play the newest Final Fantasy games, for instance, for free. Because as it stood, I had to wait for them to go on to, like, greatest hits, or I had to wait until, like, I think I fucking bought Final Fantasy VII in, like, 2001, 2002, and it still felt expensive. I bought Xenogears the same year, even older, I think, because that's from 96, maybe. I don't remember which one came out first. I know they were in development at the same time. That was, like, 40 fucking bucks, because it was basically a rare collector's item to a certain degree, and I was like, oh, I'm so lucky to have this, but also, there goes my gaming budget for, like, the next couple of months on a PS1 game, dead slap in the middle of the PS2 era. So, like, games were almost completely prohibitively expensive for me, you know? I had to wait until my lower middle class dad, who I was barely even raised by because of the way the custody arrangements worked out. So, you know, I can't even claim that level of vaguely middle classness growing up. But, you know, maybe I would get video games from him for Christmas if he was feeling generous. And then I'd play those all year because I couldn't afford to buy new ones. So the idea that this can work to where I can play it for free without putting any money in, it makes the little kid in me that was so crushed by poverty incredibly happy. The reality of it, though, is a little bit different. And, like, the reality of what Final Fantasy Ever Crisis is as a gacha, compared to what I thought it was going to be, being like a chibi anthology of all of the games that would get periodically updated. I guess I didn't put two and two together that to be able to afford to periodically update a game that was coming out for free on mobile that was this ambitious, it would have to be monetized somehow. I really hate being poor. It's caused me so much trauma in a way that, like, I had to go on vacation to realize how much poverty trauma I have. I'm in my 30s, and this is something that, despite how much I hate it, I keep thinking in my head of as, like, my first adult vacation, even though as an adult I've taken many vacations. I've driven all by myself all the way to, from the East Coast to Texas and back. I have driven up and down the East Coast in both directions. And yet, this trip to Florida to go see Universal Studios for their Halloween event was probably the most expensive of any of those, and, like, gas was a serious concern on several of those. And I did a lot of other things on those trips. There's, like, one of those I even spent like $100 at a like fancy restaurant in a port city with good food, because that's one of the things that makes my heart sing. I don't know, port cities always have amazing food. That's just the thing. That's the thing about the East Coast that I love, and something I'm willing to save up for, in the same way that, you know, some of us save up for Gacha banners. But this trip to Florida was so much more expensive than that. And if I had let the people I was going with have their way in terms of planning this, it would have been at least twice as expensive, if not a lot more. I mean, the hotels that they were looking at before I had to say, I'm too fucking poor for this. If you want me to come with you, you're going to have to choose a different hotel or pay for my room. Or like the fucking layers. Okay, so just as an example of how this works out in real life, you know, Universal Studios, you can pay, I don't know, like $200 or so to get an off-night ticket to Halloween Horror Nights. Now, we went on Sunday. We didn't go on Saturday, which is the big night, or Friday, which I guess is probably the second biggest night, but probably Saturday's the biggest. We didn't go because, from what I remember, everybody thought it'd be too expensive or too crowded, or some combination of both. So we ended up doing the Sunday. Which is kind of ridiculous because we also ended up getting early access passes, which is like an extra $100 or so per ticket. But we also were considering paying like an extra $200 or $300, which is more than the fucking tickets were to begin with, to get an express pass so that we can skip all the poor people in the lines. And it does get kind of grating standing in a line for like an hour and just seeing someone who had twice the money you did to pay for tickets just fucking breeze past you in an express lane. But it is what it is. It was all the fun I could afford. And that's what America is. It's all the fun you can fucking afford. All the life you can afford. All the health you can afford. All the anything you can afford. There's two ways of looking at that. And rich people look at it one way, and the poor, well, we fucking die. Anyways, that was, you know, that trip cost me most of my income for the better part of a month, so I'm gonna be fucking broke for a while. Hey, if you would like me not to be super broke this month, you could send me some money, especially on coffee. You can make a one-time donation. Just send me like $10. I would really appreciate it this month. Especially, I promise I won't spend it on Ever Crisis. Actually, that brings me to another point. Like, even though I am willing to give Ever Crisis a token amount of money, I can't possibly imagine spending that on polls. There is no way I can rationalize that. It's been like this for like literally every game that has worked like this. Every Final Fantasy gacha. The fucking paid currency is, from my perspective, so goddamn expensive that you better be like offering me a free blowjob with pull to actually spend that shit at the same like level as I would the free premium currency. Because like I can't imagine people doing regular pulls. Like one regular pull for like $30 or whatever it costs. You know what I mean? To buy that many fucking premium gems. I spent like $40 on the game. I think I got like 5,000 red gems. That's not even 2 fucking pulls. That's more than $20 a pull. Who's doing that? You fucking psychopaths. On just like a normal pull too. Like not even like one of the premium banner pulls, which I haven't thought are necessarily that great yet. Like, wait till we get some really good rewards for that type of stuff before I'm gonna spend probably most of this paid biz. Or paid crystals, red crystals, I don't fucking know. I'm probably just gonna hoard those for a little while, until they actually give me a reason to spend that. But like, there are people to whom have such a different perspective on life and money and scarcity than I do, that they're just like, oh yeah, it's only $20 a pull. I could literally not fathom spending red crystals that way. It to the point where like I forget that other people do. I forget that it's even possible to do that. Like there is such a strong imperative in me to not waste my fucking money like that, because if I do, I might die. And let's be honest, like, and this is, you know, we see echoes of one of the reasons I love Final Fantasy VII so much is like Midgar is like ultimate late stage capitalism in a lot of ways, and it in like I fucking relate so hard to everybody living in the slums. Like it makes me, it's the reason I love Aerith so much, because she's like a fucking Mother Teresa of the slums, and like I need an Aerith in my life. Like I know Cloud needs a Tifa in his life, and the whole backstory between the two of them and how she like brings him back from the brink of insanity, you know, spoilers for the later parts of the original Final Fantasy VII, and I guess where we'll eventually go with the remake series and even Ever Crisis. But Tifa may have done a lot for Cloud, but like the person that I need in my life is an Aerith. I need free flowers. I need, you know, like I need someone to be thoughtful of me and to consider if my needs have been met. I need help. And like it just feels like such a middle class fucking problem to be able to complain about a gacha. Like it feels like there's a certain amount of privilege in your life to where this is a thing that you can complain about. And I know that that's a completely wrong take. Like I'm already canceling myself for that, you know what I mean? Because there's got to be plenty of people that have completely other issues for which this is a control thing, to where like, you know, maybe they're in my position, they feel like this is the only thing in their life that they can control, or this is the only way in their life that spending money actually makes them happy, or I don't know what kind of weird trauma you might have, but let's face it, we're all pretty traumatized. It's 2023, shit is fucked. So maybe, you know, this is the one place that you feel control, and being fucked over in game makes you feel like your life is falling apart. I don't know. Maybe that's why you're complaining. Maybe it's not that you're middle class and entitled, but it's like, I often worry about food and gas. You know, like, I don't know, like, worrying that I'm not getting bang for my buck in a gacha, or that a gacha is too pay to win. I accepted the fact that I won't be able to bankroll this game coming into it, you know what I mean? Like, I accepted the fact that I'm going to be playing this for free most of the time. It is because of guilt that I put in $40 in the beginning, because I'm probably not going to ever be able to do that again, and definitely not after that vacation. Oh my god, I'm going to be broke until after Christmas. I don't even celebrate Christmas because I've never been able to afford to get people presents. Actually, bah humbug, do you know the reason I don't like Christmas? Because when I was growing up, I realized that my mother was choosing between fixing the heater during the winter and buying me Christmas presents. I was a greedy little shit when I was a kid. I asked her for fucking everything. I didn't realize that that was the reason the heater wasn't getting fixed, and the reason that I was cold all winter was because I wanted more toys. And, you know, maybe it was a little bit more complicated than that, and that my toys alone and that budget wouldn't have been enough. But, like, it always felt like to me, as I grew older, that there was a correlation between the things that were bought for me for Christmas and how cold it was every winter. I mean, that's the kind of trauma I'm talking about. Like, y'all middle class motherfuckers, I love you, but like, you just don't know that kind of shit. You've never experienced that. You don't have that perspective. And I guess in a lot of ways that means that I've been beaten down so much by the pay-to-win structure of this country and the world that I don't even expect better out of video games at this point, you know? Like, I couldn't beat certain parts, and I put a lot of effort into this game. I try pretty hard. I put a lot of time into it. I just want to be good at it, you know? And yeah, there were parts of each event that have been difficult for me to clear. And it really looks like that, like, I can't, again, I've said this before, I can't even get into the EX3 for Sephiroth. I probably have to get like a power level of like 160 or more to even get it to unlock. And I'm stuck at about 140. Maybe, again, level 55 gets me there to the point where I can even try the quest, but like, people are complaining about how it's too hard. Well, actually, none of the Sephiroth quests that I have been able to even do feel that hard. But at the same time, there's one that I can't unlock, and I have to beat that before I can even unlock the Crash event, which is supposed to actually be the high difficulty thing. Fuck! Because how, like, it is absolutely feels to be the case that to even challenge these missions, you have to have been, to a certain degree, wailing on this game. So I can't imagine what people are like, how people are feeling who haven't spent any money on this game at all. Or people who are playing more casually. But at the same time, while that is kind of the outrage, I think, at the same time, like, I didn't really expect to be able to do all of it. I didn't come into this game expecting to be able to do all of the content right away. I don't ever really expect to be able to do all the content as it comes out. And maybe it's in part, like, while I love the strategy and the theory crafting and all of that stuff, I'm just not the kind of person who enjoys Final Fantasy super bosses. They're just a little bit too technical for me, to where it's like you've got to remember attack patterns and all sorts of things, and you've got to distinctly switch strategies at a certain point and highly manually play certain things and all of that kind of stuff. It's just not super exciting for me. Like, one of the things that really drew me to the Final Fantasy series was the world building and the story and all of that. Like, I would have enjoyed this as an anime probably more than I did as a video game. If anything, maybe some of the video game elements were holding it back a little bit to me, but I came to love the video games and their mechanics through that. So again, I'm not like one of the super high difficulty, super bossy type Final Fantasy players. So, I expect that there are going to be things that come out that I'm just not going to have the patience or diligence to beat. And this is all even without talking about, like, drop rates for gold tickets and all that sort of stuff, and whether the daily rewards for this side of the event are anywhere near as good as the other. I just don't remember there being as big of a chasm between the Beach Parasol and the 1,000 Waves in how hard it was to build them up. Yes, the Yellow Watermelon Tonberry was considerably harder, and, like, the higher and more challenging levels of that beat my ass remorselessly. And I couldn't beat a lot of them even then. So, like, again, I'm kind of used to there being content that comes out in this game that's either too difficult for me to beat, or just something I probably could have beat if I put a couple hundred, if not thousands of dollars into the game or something, or whatever. I'm used to them putting in a fast lane. It's just like the theme park, honestly. If you pay twice as much as everybody else, you get a fast lane. Congratulations. Even our fucking roads are like that. I mean, not so much here in the South. If you're somebody from the North, you're probably way more used to toll roads, because you're all fucking wealthy up there. At least compared to the South. Y'all are fucking rich. I know you don't feel like it. I know all of you, like, everybody who moved from New Jersey or Pennsylvania or whatever down into North Carolina or South Carolina or Alabama or whatever, you don't feel like you were wealthy because you were raised around all of them, but you come down here and your privilege is massively apparent because you have lived dramatically different lives than us. And even transplanted into the South, you have more money than us. You gentrify our land and colonize it to the point where we are eventually Trail of Tears further down into the South until we all end up in Florida homeless. I guess what I'm saying is the world has bigger problems than whether or not a Final Fantasy gacha is being too pay to win, but, well, this does kind of feel like that a little bit. But at the same time also, I guess part of what I'm trying to get across is that, like, you'll be fine if you don't play every mission You don't have to challenge them all. You can just accept that there's certain things that you won't be able to beat and have fun with what you can do. That's a thing that you have to learn when you're poor. That I think some of you are just a little bit too privileged, and I know you're going to have a really hard time hearing that because no one can acknowledge their privilege, and like, I'm having a hard time because I know I'm making the case that I'm broke as shit. And then there's probably people in South America like, you paid $40 into this game and you're calling yourself poor? I know, it's relative. And I recognize that compared to maybe a lot of people in the world, I am in a somewhat privileged position. And I don't think that, like, you are used to the idea of there are things that you can't do because you don't have enough money. But for me, that's just how life is. So maybe I'm more willing to tolerate that out of a game because, and at least in part, because I feel so grateful that it will allow me to play it for free. It truly represents kind of the best and worst of the world right now. It is a system which openly encourages huge swaths of people to play something that developers have put a lot of effort into. Just a staggering amount of effort into. For nothing. This would have been almost unimaginable to me as a teenager. A teenage version of me would be asking myself how I ever got so lucky. Am I pirating these video games? Did I torrent it? These are the kind of questions that I would be asking myself, and I think the adult version of myself would be saying, no, it's not all good. It's like a wish from a monkey's paw, where you get like the worst version of everything you ever wanted. So that's where I leave this video, with the bittersweet conclusion that, yeah, there does seem to be content in this game that you kind of fundamentally have to pay for to be able to do. And maybe it's just the case that that paid players get to challenge this like a week early, and with the level 55 upgrade, the rest of us, if we are diligent in our grind, can catch up to the place where people have paid to be last week. Which again is just a fucking metaphor for life at this point. But maybe I'll be able to play the Sephiroth Crash mission, and maybe I'll be able to discover how hard it actually is, but for right now, I'm just too fucking poor to know, and that's a little insulting. But at the same time, I've had a lot of fun playing this game, and I really enjoy it even right now, even through this realization, and I am more than willing to stick it out and try to grind through this event and see what happens. And I am so excited actually for the free weapon. It confirms the theory that I put out yesterday, to where we're going to be getting another attack and physical defense, or at least a strong physical defense sub weapon. Because again, I'm not sure that these barriers are going to be the biggest deal. And apparently, like, this is good at countering Octoslash. At least that's what the announcement said. I don't know. I haven't been able to pull one yet. Because the gold tickets are hard to come by, and I stopped to record a video instead of just grinding through the game and figuring this shit out myself. You know, I am doing the Materia Awakening, which, by the way, as a side quest, which, again, by the way, like, I don't know if I've done something massively wrong, but, like, suddenly I have no gil? What the fuck happened? Like, I didn't realize how expensive upgrading materia was in gil or something, but, like, you know, I get like 4 materia upgraded, or maybe 5, and all of a sudden I don't have the gil to do the 6th? What is that? I mean, I thought gil was readily apparent and abundant in this game, and suddenly the premium missions for gold tickets has wiped out all of my gold coins, which is just kind of a completely separate issue, in part because there's no like really good reliable way to farm gil. Like, there's not a gil farming stage in the way that like there would be in, I mean, there was in the Brave Exvius games. There is a daily quest that gets you a pittance, but like you can only do it once. Again, it's not farmable. I mean, you can get gil from doing quests, sure, and that's probably how I accumulated most of mine over time, but like there is no quick way to farm just gil directly quickly. So I've also become kind of hard capped on how quickly I can even farm the mission reward gold tickets, which is just frustrating as well. So a lot of reasons to be annoyed with this update, really, but also a lot of reasons that I will keep playing and probably accept this as a challenge instead of as an insult, because but also, I guess, just another point. I'm kind of a little bit let down. I don't want to say this before I get off. Just with how slow story has been. I don't know. Like, I guess, as I said earlier, my original like imagination for what Ever Crisis was going to be like was unrealistic. But I just imagined that there would be more story. And that things like that all of I think what I imagined was that all of the story would be released up front, or that we would get like a whole game worth of story that we could play through up front, and then they would add whole games later or something like that, or even that I might have to buy each game's story for like $5 or something. I don't know, like just a little bit of money, just like a pittance, like $2 you can buy, you know, the chibi Ever Crisis Core or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how I expected this to go, but this isn't it. Somehow I didn't really expect it to be a gacha, even though that's exactly what I should have expected. But I just wanted a place where I could keep all of the story of Final Fantasy VII in one place, in one format, and just play around in the universe. Because, you know, each game is a window into that universe, but if you can look through all the windows at once, you have the whole house, I guess, in this metaphor, and I can play around in the house that is the world of Final Fantasy VII completely. You know, cross-playing between games and all that. I can use my in-game Final Fantasy VII Sephiroth beating Cloud to come back and beat Minerva's ass in Crisis Core or something. Like, there were just all sorts of exciting possibilities, which, to be fair, like, haven't not happened yet. This is ultimately the experience that we may get over time, but I didn't expect it to trickle out like this, and it's a little bit disappointing. Although there's plenty of content to play, like, this is a perfectly passable gacha, I just didn't expect it to be that. You know, I was expecting something a bit different. And I'm a bit disappointed that I didn't get it, but also the other thing that I was imagining is probably comparatively impossible to monetize and would have just fallen apart before I could have played through all the stories anyways. So, welcome to Hell World, where everything is a devil's bargain. Ain't capitalism great? Well, anyways, I'm sorry that this episode was probably particularly dour and complainy, and at points not very focused on the video game that I am here to talk about. But I don't know. I feel like, especially in Gumi Economics, this is the place where that stuff, which colors our opinion of the game, but isn't like directly talking about how big the modifier on something is, or the kind of things that gamers usually talk about. I want to talk about the game in a way that gamers usually don't, and that's what this series is going to be. So if you like that, definitely keep an eye out for more of the economics series. I will try to keep going and expanding, and hopefully this sets a good baseline for the series. But if that's what you're into, like and subscribe if you are going to keep playing Final Fantasy Ever Crisis, or if you are a War of the Visions fan, or just a Final Fantasy fan in general, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, be sure to check out the link in the description, which is going to show you all the other parts of the Jockey Fox Media empire, particularly if you are interested in anti-capitalist takes. I have kind of an on and off relationship with my main channel sometimes because I put a lot of work into the content over there, at least when I'm really feeling it. So it can be a little bit more draining of a channel than running like a gaming channel. But definitely a lot of anti-capitalist sentiment over there if you're interested. I've got a video coming out pretty soon about Israel, Hamas, and kind of some of the history and context there that's important. Similar to the way that I contextualized the Russia-Ukraine war when it first started or within its first month, I also want to do a quick dive into, not a 14-episode series this time, but a quick dive into what is going on and what has gone on with that conflict. So if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, or, on the other hand, I think maybe for Fox Talks After Dark, which is my more adult series, it's focused on sexual health and relationships, things like that. I think for that one, I might be going a slightly different direction. And before the end of October, talking about the class history of certain Halloween horror, like vampires and zombies. Can you guess which class is represented by each faction? It's probably pretty easy, but I don't know. I think the history of that is really fascinating, and there's like... I feel like of all movie genres, horror can tend to be one of the more class conscious, which is really interesting. So I'm really excited to have that conversation with the horror head. But if any of that sounds exciting, check out the link tree in the description. That's also a place where you can donate to the channel. It's where you're going to find that coffee link to send me some money. All of those things, any Jackie Fox related links that you need will be in that link tree in the description. So all that's left for me to say is thank you for watching. I know this has been a longer episode, but I really appreciate you tuning in and sticking around. You're a beautiful person, and I'll see you in the next one.